What would you do if someone underestimated your worth, judging you solely by your appearance? When a waitress mocks a quiet customer for his tip, she has no idea he's not just any diner guest. He's Shaquille O'Neal, and he owns the place. What happens next will leave you speechless. The door jingled, and a towering figure stepped inside. Dressed in a simple gray hoodie, black sweatpants, and sneakers, Shaquille O'Neal scanned the room. His 7 feet 1 inch frame was hard to miss, but his casual demeanor suggested he wasn't seeking attention. For Shaq, this was just a quiet stop after a long day, a chance to enjoy a meal away from the spotlight. Heads turned as he entered, whispers rippling across the diner. Some customers recognized him instantly but hesitated to approach. A family seated near the window exchanged excited glances, while a couple at the counter quietly debated whether it was really him. Despite the low murmurs, Shaq simply smiled and made his way to a corner booth, lowering himself carefully onto the cushioned seat. Behind the counter, Lisa, a waitress in her late 20s, juggled plates and coffee pots with a practiced ease. Her uniform was neatly pressed, and her blonde hair was tied into a ponytail. Lisa was known for her sharp tongue and her ability to read customers. Over the years, she'd developed a habit of judging patrons by their appearance, often deciding who was worth her best service and who wasn't. When her eyes landed on Shaq, she barely concealed a smirk. To her, he was just another casually dressed customer, probably here for a cheap meal and an average tip. Adjusting her apron, Lisa approached his table, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. "Menu?" she asked, her tone clipped and her smile forced. Shaq looked up and gave her a warm smile. "Yes, please. Thank you." Lisa handed him the menu with little enthusiasm, muttering under her breath, "Let's see what the big guy orders." She walked away before Shaq could say another word, leaving him alone with the laminated list of diner classics. The family by the window whispered among themselves. "It's Shaq, right?" the teenage son asked, glancing over. His mother nodded. "I think so. But why's he here?" At the counter, an elderly man leaned over to his wife and said, "That man's got the height of a basketball player." Lisa returned a moment later, standing at the edge of the booth with a hand on her hip. "Ready to order?" she asked, her tone less than welcoming. Shaq nodded. "I'll have pancakes, scrambled eggs, bacon, and orange juice," he said. Lisa raised an eyebrow, unimpressed by the simplicity of his order. "Got it," she replied, walking off without writing it down. As she passed the counter, she muttered to a colleague, "Big guy, small wallet, probably won't leave more than a few bucks." Shaq, overhearing her comment, remained calm. He leaned back in his seat, his eyes wandering over the diner's retro decor. Despite Lisa's behavior, his warm smile never wavered. As Shaq waited for his meal, the diner buzzed with its usual energy. Plates clattered, the hum of conversation filled the air, and the sizzle of burgers on the grill provided a comforting backdrop. Shaq leaned back in his booth, his towering frame making the space look smaller than it was. He didn't seem to mind the occasional curious glances or hushed whispers from other patrons. At the counter, Lisa smirked as she relayed Shaq's order to the kitchen. "Pancakes and eggs," she scoffed to a fellow server. "I could have guessed. The simplest order on the menu. You'd think someone like him would splurge a little, but I guess not." Her colleague, Jake, frowned slightly. "Isn't that Shaquille O'Neal?" he whispered, nodding toward the corner booth. Lisa shrugged dismissively. "Yeah, so what? He's just another guy with an appetite, and I doubt he's the generous type." She grabbed a coffee pot and headed toward the tables, a smug expression plastered across her face. Shaq, meanwhile, noticed the whispers, but chose to remain calm. He had faced far worse than judgmental glances and sly remarks. His eyes wandered over the vintage photos on the walls, appreciating the diner's character. When Lisa returned with his meal, she placed the plate on the table with a loud clatter, her tone as cool as her expression. "There you go," she said curtly, barely meeting his gaze. "Thank you," Shaq replied warmly, as if he hadn't noticed her attitude. Lisa lingered for a moment, watching for any reaction. When Shaq simply picked up his fork and began eating, she rolled her eyes and walked off. At a nearby table, a young family was observing the interaction. The father leaned over to his wife. "He's handling this so gracefully," he said. Most people would have said something by now. The wife nodded, glancing at Lisa. She's so rude. Doesn't she realize who he is? As Shaq quietly enjoyed his meal, Lisa continued her routine, occasionally glancing in his direction with an air of superiority. She even made a point of loudly chatting with a table near his, ensuring her voice carried. "I've been working here for years," Lisa told a couple. "You can tell a lot about people by how they order and tip. Some folks act like they're big shots but barely leave enough for a cup of coffee." The couple exchanged awkward smiles, clearly uncomfortable with her comments. Back at his booth, Shaq wiped his mouth with a napkin and looked around the diner. The warm ambiance, the cheerful chatter, and even the sizzling sounds from the kitchen reminded him of the simple joys of life. He wasn't bothered by Lisa's arrogance. Instead, he seemed to view the experience as an opportunity to observe and learn. When Lisa passed by again, he looked up and asked, "How long have you been working here?" Lisa stopped in her tracks, surprised by the question. "Why?" she asked, her tone defensive. "Just curious," Shaq said with a smile. "You seem very familiar with the place." Lisa smirked, mistaking his politeness for naivety. "I've been here for 6 years," she said, crossing her arms. "Long enough to know how this place works and how to spot certain types of customers." Shaq nodded, his smile unwavering. "It's good to know the diner has someone so experienced," he said sincerely. Lisa tilted her head, unsure whether he was being genuine or sarcastic. She walked away, muttering under her breath. As Shaq finished his meal, the family at the nearby table watched him closely. The teenage son whispered, "He seems so nice. Why is she treating him like that?" The father sighed. "Some people judge too quickly. They don't see the person beyond the surface." Shaq stood up and placed a crisp $20 bill under his plate, his calm demeanor never wavering. He adjusted his hoodie and walked toward the door, nodding politely to the diners who smiled at him. But before he could leave, Lisa's voice rang out across the diner, loud and mocking. "Wow, big guy leaves a big tip," she sneered, holding up the bill. "Guess he thinks this is generous." The room fell silent. Diners exchanged uneasy glances, and a child at the counter asked, "Why is she being mean?" Shaq paused, turning back toward his booth. His towering figure filled the space, and his steady gaze silenced even the faintest whispers. "Miss," he said calmly, his deep voice resonating through the diner, "I think you've misunderstood something." Lisa stood at Shaq's table, holding the $20 bill he had left. Her laughter echoed through the diner, loud and mocking. She waved the bill in the air, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "For someone like him," she sneered, "you'd think he could leave more than just $20. I guess all that size doesn't mean a big wallet." Her comment sent a ripple of discomfort through the diner. Patrons exchanged uneasy glances, and the cheerful chatter from moments ago faded into awkward silence. A young couple whispered at a corner booth, their faces tight with disapproval. "He was so polite," the woman said. "Why is she being like this?" Nearby, an elderly man shook his head, muttering to his wife, "That's no way to treat anyone, let alone a paying customer." Shaq stopped mid-stride, just steps from the door. His broad shoulders rose and fell as he let out a steadying breath. Slowly he turned around, his towering presence filling the room like an undeniable force. The entire diner seemed to hold its breath as Shaq walked back to his table. He moved with deliberate calm, his footsteps the only sound in the tense silence. Lisa's smug smile faltered as she met his gaze. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes carried a weight that made her shift uncomfortably. Shaq stood before her, his deep voice calm but commanding. "Excuse me, miss," he began, his words cutting through the silence like a blade, "but I think you've misunderstood something." Lisa blinked, her confidence wavering. She clutched the bill tighter, unsure of what to say. "I left that tip," Shaq continued, his tone steady. Not because of how you treated me, but because it's the right thing to do. And I didn't say anything before because I wanted to see how you'd treat someone you assumed was just an ordinary customer. Lisa's face turned red. She tried to compose herself, stammering, I didn't mean anything by it. I just thought... Shaq raised a hand gently, silencing her without raising his voice. You thought you could judge me based on my appearance, he said. But respect isn't something you give only to people who look like they can afford it. It's something you give to everyone. By now, the entire diner was riveted, every pair of eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. A young boy at a nearby table whispered, Is he mad? His mother shook her head, her voice soft. No, honey. He's teaching her a lesson. Shaq reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He unfolded it slowly, revealing a sleek black leather card. On the card, the logo of the diner gleamed under the overhead lights, accompanied by the words, Owner and Founder, Shaquille O'Neal. The room collectively gasped. Lisa's mouth fell open, the color draining from her face. She took a step back, clutching the tray against her chest as if it were a shield. You see? Shaq said, his tone never losing its composure. I'm not just a customer here. I own this diner. The revelation rippled through the room like a shockwave. Patrons murmured in awe, a young man pulling out his phone to discreetly snap a photo. Lisa's arrogance crumbled instantly. I had no idea, she stammered. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to... Shaq held up a hand again, stopping her mid-apology. It's not about knowing who I am, he said firmly. It's about how you treat every person who walks through those doors. The gravity of his words settled over the room. Even those who hadn't spoken up earlier now nodded in agreement, their silence a tacit acknowledgement of their own complicity. Shaq's gaze softened slightly as he looked at Lisa. Mistakes happen, he said. What matters is whether you're willing to learn from them. Lisa nodded quickly, her voice barely a whisper. I am. I will. Shaq smiled faintly. Good, he said. Then let's move forward. The diner buzzed with low murmurs as Shaq's revelation began to sink in. Customers exchanged astonished glances, their earlier discomfort now replaced with a mix of admiration and curiosity. Shaq, still standing tall at the table, commanded the room without raising his voice. Lisa, on the other hand, stood frozen. Her earlier smugness had evaporated, replaced by a pale, stricken expression. Her mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came out. The silver tray in her hands trembled slightly, and she quickly set it down on a nearby table to steady herself. You're... the owner? She finally managed to stammer, her voice barely above a whisper. Shaq nodded, his face calm but serious. Yes, he said simply, his deep voice carrying to every corner of the room. I purchased this diner to support small communities and create a welcoming space for everyone. Tonight I came here to see how my staff interacts with customers. I wanted to experience this place the way anyone else would. The weight of his words hung in the air. The other diners sat riveted, their meals forgotten. At a corner table, a young couple leaned in closer, one of them whispering, Can you believe it? He's not just a celebrity, he actually owns the place. Across the room, an elderly man adjusted his glasses and nodded approvingly. That's what I call a lesson in humility, he said to his wife. Lisa's face flushed deeper as she struggled to respond. I didn't know, she stammered. I thought you were just... Shaq held up a hand, his expression softening slightly. It's not about who I am, he said. You shouldn't need to know someone's title or status to treat them with respect. That's the real lesson here. The room fell silent again, Shaq's words resonating with everyone present. Even the waitstaff, who had been watching from behind the counter, lowered their heads, reflecting on their own behavior. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I was wrong to judge you like that. I didn't mean to. I didn't think. Shaq gave a small nod, his tone measured but kind. Apologies are a start, he said. But change takes effort. Everyone makes mistakes. It's how you fix them that matters. He turned to the rest of the diner, his gaze sweeping over the patrons. And this isn't just about Lisa. It's about all of us. How often do we judge people based on their appearance, their clothes, or what we assume about them? It's easy to jump to conclusions, but it takes real strength to treat everyone with fairness and kindness. A quiet murmur of agreement rippled through the room. At a nearby table, a young boy tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Is he mad?" he asked softly. "No, sweetie," his mother replied, her voice warm. "He's teaching us all a lesson." Lisa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, taking a deep breath. "I promise I'll do better," she said earnestly. "I'll change." Shaq offered her a faint smile. "Good," he said, "because this diner is meant to be a place where everyone feels welcome, no exceptions." The atmosphere in the diner began to shift. The earlier tension dissolved, replaced by a collective sense of introspection and resolve. Customers who had been silent now nodded in agreement, and even the most skeptical faces softened. A middle-aged man at the counter leaned over to his friend. "You don't see that kind of humility every day," he said. "That guy could have embarrassed her, but instead, he chose to teach her." Lisa turned to the other diners, her voice trembling but determined. "I'm sorry to everyone here," she said. "I let my assumptions cloud my judgment. It won't happen again." Shaq stepped back slightly, giving her the space to address the room. He watched as Lisa took responsibility, her earlier arrogance replaced by genuine remorse. When she finished, the room broke into light applause. It wasn't loud or boisterous, but it carried a sincere acknowledgement of the lesson they had all just witnessed. As the applause subsided, Shaq gestured toward the staff behind the counter. "After tonight, we're going to have a meeting," he said. "This diner isn't just about food, it's about community. We're going to make some changes, and it starts with how we treat one another." The waitstaff nodded, their expressions a mix of respect and determination. As Shaq resumed his seat, the mood in the diner transformed. Conversations resumed, but they were quieter, more thoughtful. Lisa returned to work, her posture humbler and her smile no longer forced. For the first time that evening, the diner truly felt like the welcoming space Shaq had envisioned, a place where everyone, regardless of their background, could find not just a meal, but a moment of connection and kindness. As the last plates were cleared from the tables and the diner quieted down for the night, Shaq stood at the center of the room, surrounded by his staff. The earlier tension had dissolved, replaced by a mix of nervous anticipation and curiosity. Even Lisa, who had spent most of the evening avoiding eye contact, now stood with her head bowed, waiting to hear what the towering new owner had to say. Shaq's deep, resonant voice broke the silence. "I didn't buy this diner just to own another business," he began, his gaze moving across the room. "I bought it because I believe in its potential, not just as a place to serve great food, but as a space where people can feel valued, respected, and connected." The staff exchanged glances, their initial skepticism melting away. Shaq's sincerity was palpable, and his vision for the diner was unlike anything they had expected. He continued, "But for that to happen, we need to change how we do things. Tonight, I saw some things that need fixing, not just in the way we treat customers, but in how we see one another." His gaze settled on Lisa for a brief moment, not with anger, but with a firm determination that made her shift uncomfortably. Shaq gestured toward the worn-out booths and scuffed floor tiles. "First, we're going to give this place a little makeover," he said. "New decor, better lighting, and a layout that makes people feel at home. This diner has history, and we're going to honor that while making it a space where everyone, Young or old, rich or struggling, feels welcome. A murmur of approval rippled through the group. One of the cooks, a burly man named Pete, raised a hand hesitantly. "What about the menu?" he asked. "Are we changing that too?" Shaq smiled. "Not entirely," he said. "The classics stay. People come here for the pancakes, the burgers, and the milkshakes, and I'm not about to take that away. But we'll also add some fresh options, healthy choices, local ingredients, food that reflects the diversity of this neighborhood." The team nodded, their initial hesitation giving way to a sense of excitement. Even Lisa found herself intrigued, though she still felt the weight of her earlier behavior hanging over her. Shaq's tone grew more serious. "But it's not just about the food or the decor," he said. "What really makes a place special is the people who work here. You all are the heart of this diner, and how you treat each other and our customers will define what this place becomes." He turned to Lisa, his voice softening but still firm. "Lisa, you made a mistake tonight," he said, "but mistakes are only failures if we don't learn from them. I'm giving you a choice. You can leave, or you can stay and commit to doing better, not just for me or the customers, but for yourself." Lisa looked up, her eyes glistening with a mix of shame and hope. "I want to stay," she said, her voice trembling. "I want to prove that I can change." Shaq nodded, offering her a small but encouraging smile. "Good," he said, "because this isn't about punishment, it's about growth, and that goes for everyone here." He looked around the room, addressing the entire team. "Starting next week, we're introducing training programs, not just for customer service, but for leadership, teamwork, and community engagement. I want this diner to be more than a place to eat. I want it to be a hub for this neighborhood, where people feel seen and supported." The staff broke into applause, the energy in the room shifting to one of optimism and determination. Shaq's vision wasn't just inspiring, it was transformative. As the meeting wrapped up, Shaq clapped his hands together. "Now let's clean up and get some rest," he said, his warm smile returning. "Tomorrow is the first day of a new chapter for this diner." As the staff dispersed, Lisa lingered for a moment, approaching Shaq hesitantly. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving me another chance." Shaq placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Just make it count," he said. And with that, the diner's transformation began, not just in its appearance, but in the spirit that would come to define it. The diner that had once been an ordinary corner eatery began its transformation into something extraordinary. Within weeks of Shaquille O'Neal's hands-on leadership, the changes were both visible and palpable. What started as a simple effort to renovate the space quickly grew into a full-scale reimagining of the diner's purpose. The renovation began with the physical space. Gone were the scuffed tiles and peeling paint. In their place, polished wooden floors gleamed under warm lighting, and vibrant murals depicting scenes of community and togetherness adorned the walls. A chalkboard menu hung prominently behind the counter, with a blend of classic favorites and fresh, innovative dishes written in colorful script. A sign near the entrance read, "Welcome all. This is your diner." Shaq had been clear from the start. The diner wasn't just a business, it was a gathering place for the community. To that end, he introduced affordable meal options, ensuring that families and individuals from all walks of life could enjoy a meal without stretching their budgets. He also created a pay-it-forward program, allowing customers to buy meals in advance for those in need. The grand reopening event was a spectacle that drew local media attention. Families, students, and workers lined up outside, eager to experience the revamped space. Shaq himself greeted customers at the door, shaking hands and posing for pictures. He was no longer just a basketball legend. He was a neighbor, a friend, and a symbol of hope for the community. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. A live jazz band played soft tunes in the corner, adding to the diner's welcoming charm. The staff, wearing fresh uniforms emblazoned with the diner's new logo, moved with renewed purpose and energy. Lisa, once skeptical and dismissive, now greeted customers with a genuine smile, her demeanor transformed by the second chance she'd been given. Lisa's growth didn't go unnoticed. One evening, a regular customer, a retired teacher named Mrs. Caldwell, approached her. "I've been coming here for years," Mrs. Caldwell said, her eyes twinkling. "But I've never seen this place so alive. You're doing a wonderful job, young lady." Lisa blushed, her gratitude shining through. "Thank you," she replied. "It's all thanks to Mr. O'Neal. He's shown us what this place could be." Shaq's involvement didn't stop with the grand reopening. He became a regular fixture at the diner, often sitting at a booth near the window, chatting with customers and staff. His presence was a constant reminder of the diner's new mission, to be a space where everyone felt valued. One memorable afternoon, a young boy approached Shaq with wide eyes. "Are you really the owner?" the boy asked, clutching a basketball under his arm. Shaq grinned, nodding. "That's right, little man. And you know what? This place belongs to you, too. So what's your favorite thing to eat here?" The boy beamed. "The pancakes!" he exclaimed. "Well, you've got great taste," Shaq said, ruffling the boy's hair. Moments like these became the norm at the diner, where connections were formed over meals and laughter echoed through the space. Meanwhile, the diner's success began to ripple outward. Local food bloggers and influencers highlighted its transformation, praising not just the menu but the sense of community it fostered. News outlets picked up the story, showcasing how a simple act of kindness had turned a struggling diner into a beacon of hope. Shaq's leadership also inspired the staff to rise to the occasion. Lisa, in particular, took on a mentorship role, guiding new hires and sharing her story of redemption. She often reminded them, "It's not just about serving food, it's about serving people with respect." Pete, the burly cook who had initially been skeptical of the changes, became one of the diner's biggest advocates. "I'll admit I wasn't sure about all this at first," he said during a staff meeting. "But seeing how this place has brought people together, it's something special." The diner also hosted monthly community events, from free cooking classes to charity fundraisers. These gatherings solidified its reputation as more than just a restaurant. It was a vital part of the neighborhood's fabric. By the end of the first month, the diner's transformation was undeniable. Revenue had tripled, and customer reviews painted a picture of a place where warmth and inclusivity reigned. Shaq's vision had come to life, proving that a business built on kindness and respect could thrive. Late one evening, as the last customers filed out and the staff began closing up, Shaq stood by the window, looking out at the bustling street. Lisa approached him, holding a tray of leftover cookies. "Care for a midnight snack, boss?" she asked with a playful smile. Shaq chuckled, taking a cookie. "Don't call me boss," he said. "We're a team here, and you're a big part of why this place is working." Lisa's smile widened, her gratitude evident. "Thank you for believing in me," she said softly. Shaq nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's not just about believing in you," he replied. "It's about giving people the chance to believe in themselves." The diner had become more than anyone could have imagined, a place where second chances led to new beginnings, and where every meal came with a side of hope. The story of Shaquille O'Neal's diner wasn't just about a renovated restaurant. It was about the transformation of attitudes and the ripple effect of kindness. News of the diner's turnaround spread like wildfire, becoming a viral sensation on social media. Articles, blog posts, and videos highlighted the unlikely story of a basketball legend who turned a small diner into a beacon of hope and community spirit. Local news stations ran features on the diner, emphasizing its renewed sense of purpose and inclusivity. The headlines weren't just about Shaq's fame. They focused on his humility and dedication. From basketball to business, Shaq teaches a diner and a community about respect, one article read. The diner quickly became a hotspot. People from all over the city, and even beyond, began visiting, eager to see the now famous eatery where kindness and second chances were the main course. Families, students, and workers filled the booths, sharing stories over plates of pancakes and eggs. The Pay It Forward program became a favorite, with countless meals being gifted to those in need. Shaq's vision extended beyond the walls of the diner. Inspired by its success, he began advocating for similar transformations in other businesses. Every restaurant, every store, every workplace should make people feel welcome, he said during an interview. It's not just good for business, it's good for the soul. This message resonated deeply with those who heard it. Entrepreneurs reached out to Shaq, seeking advice on how to foster inclusivity in their own ventures. Community leaders invited him to speak at events, where he shared his philosophy on leadership, humility, and the power of creating spaces where everyone felt valued. At the diner, the staff experienced their own transformation. Lisa, who had once judged people based on appearances, became a shining example of personal growth. She embraced her role as a mentor, guiding new employees and sharing her story with them. "I learned the hard way," she often said. "Respect isn't about what someone wears or how they look. It's about treating everyone like they matter, because they do." Her newfound perspective didn't go unnoticed. Customers often praised her for her warmth and professionalism, and she became a favorite among regulars. During a busy lunch shift, a young woman approached Lisa and said, "I've heard your story, and it's inspiring. You've made this place so welcoming." Lisa's smile, once reserved for the right customers, now came naturally to everyone. The impact of Shaq's leadership extended to the surrounding neighborhood as well. The diner began hosting monthly community events, from free pancake breakfasts for families to workshops on cooking and budgeting. These gatherings brought people together, fostering a sense of unity and belonging that had been missing for years. One memorable event was a charity drive to provide meals for the homeless. Shaq personally worked the grill that day, flipping burgers and serving plates with his signature warm smile. "No one's too big to lend a hand," he told a group of volunteers. His words became a mantra for the diner and its patrons alike. As the diner thrived, it inspired other businesses in the area to reevaluate their own practices. A nearby coffee shop implemented a similar Pay It Forward program, while a local grocery store began hiring employees from underserved communities. Shaq's influence was undeniable, and his commitment to fostering kindness created a ripple effect that touched countless lives. The story of the diner even reached schools, where teachers used it as a lesson in empathy and respect. In one classroom, a teacher asked her students, "What would you do if someone judged you unfairly?" The discussion that followed was filled with reflections on kindness, fairness, and the importance of looking beyond appearances. One afternoon, as Shaq sat in the diner sipping coffee, a reporter approached him for an interview. "What's the biggest lesson you've learned from this experience?" she asked. Shaq leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I've learned that people are capable of incredible change if you give them the chance. It starts with one act of kindness, one moment of seeing someone for who they really are. That's how you build something meaningful." The diner wasn't just a business anymore. It was a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of second chances and the importance of treating others with respect. Shaq's influence had turned it into a community hub, but its true legacy lay in the lives it touched and the lessons it shared. As the diner settled into its new rhythm, it became a quiet symbol of transformation. The walls, now adorned with photos of smiling customers and community events, told a story of growth and second chances. For Shaquille O'Neal, the success of the diner wasn't just about the food or the business, it was about the people. One quiet evening, as the rush hour crowd thinned, Shaq sat at his favorite corner booth, sipping a cup of coffee. The bustling diner, once marked by tension and judgment, now buzzed with laughter and warmth. Lisa, now a transformed member of the team, approached his table, her demeanor humble yet confident. "Thank you," she said softly, placing a fresh plate of pancakes on the table. Shaq looked up, his towering frame somehow at ease in the cozy setting. "For what?" "For not giving up on me," she replied, her voice steady. "You could have let me go after what happened, and you didn't. I've learned more than I ever thought I would, not just about this job, but about myself." Shaq smiled, the kind of smile that carried the weight of understanding. "Mistakes are part of the process. What matters is what we do after. You've proven that you're willing to grow, and that's what counts." The exchange was brief, but its impact lingered. Lisa's story had become an example for the entire staff, a reminder that no one was beyond redemption if they were willing to learn. The diners themselves had also changed. A place that once thrived on exclusivity now thrived on inclusivity. Regulars shared tables with newcomers, and laughter echoed across the booths. Families gathered for meals they could afford, and the community found a space where everyone felt welcome. One day, during a packed lunch hour, a young boy approached Shaq with a napkin in hand. "Can I have your autograph?" he asked shyly. Shaq knelt to the boy's level, his massive hand gently taking the pen. "Of course, buddy," he said, signing the napkin with a grin. The boy looked up, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Why do you come here so much? You're so famous you could eat anywhere." Shaq chuckled, glancing around the diner. "Because this place reminds me of what's important. It's not about fame or money, it's about being part of something bigger. Treating people right, no matter who they are." The boy nodded, clearly satisfied with the answer. As he ran back to his parents, Shaq stood and looked around the diner. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was a reflection of what he believed in: kindness, respect, and the power of starting fresh. As the evening sun streamed through the windows, the diner buzzed with life. And in that moment, it became clear that the lesson Shaq had brought wasn't just for the staff or the customers. It was for anyone willing to listen. Small acts of kindness have the power to transform lives and create a ripple effect that lasts far beyond one meal.